evening, everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks so much for coming out tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Toby Altman. I'm the director of the RCAH Center for Poetry here at Michigan State University. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this evening's event, a reading with Airea D. Matthews and the soon-to-be revealed winner of our annual undergraduate poetry contest, the Balocating Prize. So very exciting. You'll have to hang on till the end of the event to find out who that is. Before we get started, I want to thank Kresge Arts Detroit, which sponsored today's event and made it possible. And I also want to say a little bit about the Balocating Prize. The prize is named in honor of Annie Balocating, and I want to say a word about her so that we might bring her spirit into the room. Annie was a student in the first class in RCAH's predecessor, Royal, and a really committed member of that first class. During her time at MSU, Annie cultivated a passion for poetry. She participated in a workshop with faculty poets, in fact, and became a committed advocate for social justice and human rights. I was talking to Anita, who taught her during her time at MSU, and in the copy room just now, and Anita said, you know, she could have been a really fantastic poet, but I can't fault her for giving her life to human rights. So she went on after graduating from MSU to do work in Rwanda during the genocide there, and later wrote a distinguished master's thesis at the New School on the politics of memory in Rwanda. I just quoted Anita, but I'm going to quote her again. This is what Anita had to say about her time working with Annie in a 2022 introduction to this event. Quote, "Everyone liked Annie for her infectious warmth and smile, her creativity, and her sense of responsibility," close quote. The Balocating Prize was endowed in her memory by her parents to honor her commitment to the creative community at Michigan State and to the art of poetry more broadly. And I would like to extend my gratitude and the gratitude of the whole community of poets here at MSU to them for their continued support. That community of poets and creative people is richly represented in this year's entrance, which it was just so much fun to read these poems. They were extraordinary in their variety and their quality, and they speak to the really excellent work that all of you are doing. I want to congratulate the finalists and in advance the winner. And if your name is not on that list, I hope you will not take it as a judgment on the quality of your work. There was far more excellent poetry in our pool than we could recognize. Airea will announce the winner at the end of her reading and invite them to come on stage to read their winning poem. I have more housekeeping, sorry. As many of you know, we are in the thick of our spring festival, which we're calling Witness, Remember, Resist. So I hope you'll return next week for more when we welcome Kenzie Allen to campus. She'll be giving a reading right here on April 9th at 7 p.m. in the RCAH Theater, with a workshop the following day in the Multicultural Center at 6:30 p.m. And that event is co-sponsored with NAI. And the week after, we'll close out the festival with a poetry slam curated by the former poet laureate of Lansing, Masaki Takahashi, which will feature nationally recognized slam poets such as Breeze the Poet and Ayanna Florence competing alongside local poets and even some MSU students. And I'm told there will be a DJ and probably a bouncy castle. I'm kidding, but it'll be a lot of fun. And that's happening on April 19th right here at 7 p.m. The spirit of this festival is embodied in its name. At a moment when our basic freedoms are under attack, it is a form of resistance to bear witness. And it is a form of resistance to remember what our history has actually been, to remember what our future can still be. In that spirit, I would like to read a land acknowledgement drafted by the American Indian and Indigenous Studies Department here at Michigan State. Quote, "Michigan State University occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. In particular, the university resides on land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. We recognize, support, and advocate for the sovereignty of Michigan's 12 federally recognized Indian nations, for historic indigenous communities in Michigan, for indigenous individuals and communities who live here now, and for those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm indigenous sovereignty, and we will work to hold Michigan State University more accountable to the needs of American Indian and indigenous peoples." Close quote. I begin each of our readings with this land acknowledgement because I want to emphasize that the work it outlines remains urgent and unfinished. And because I believe poetry is one of the mechanisms, maybe one of the best mechanisms, through which we imagine and enact repair. I've been thinking about this recently, in part because of a poem toward the beginning of Airea D. Matthews' first book, Simulacra, which won the Yale Younger Poets Prize and was published by Yale University Press in 2016. The poem opens in a psychiatric hospital with a speaker who can no longer remember her own name, listening to a, quote, chorus of moans and whistles from the girl next door, close quote, and fending off, quote, suburban pill-popping housewife who needs to know if she can touch my hair, close quote. It is a circle of hell, worthy of Rimbaud or Dante, but into this fluorescent inferno arrives a peculiar Virgil, quote, a nurse raven who pulls me from that wreckage for routine vital checks. Her name is Anne Sexton. If that name doesn't ring a bell, you're not alone. The nurse named Anne Sexton also has no idea that she shares a name with one of the leading poets of the confessional movement of the 1960s and 70s, a feminist who wrote with dangerous honesty of her life as a woman and a mother. The poem continues, quote, I told Anne a famous poet had her name. Anne Sexton promises she'll read Anne Sexton one day, then asks how I'm doing. Never been better, Anne, never better, close quote. There are lots of poems where poets encounter their foremothers and fathers. Dante's encounter with Virgil comes to mind. So does Allen Ginsberg's A Supermarket in California, where he spots Walt Whitman, quote, poking among the meats in the refrigerator and eyeing the grocery boys, close quote. These are moments where a poet articulates their values and their lineage, their relationship to poetry as an art. We might add Matthews' encounter with Sexton to this list, provided that we register its difference. Sexton does not arrive as a guide, nor is she an alien presence from another generation. She is here to help the poet, to check in on her. This is a relationship of care and compassion. And it is a relationship between equals. We know that Anne Sexton, too, visited this particular inferno, the loneliness of the psychiatric hospital. What if, the poem asks, the distance that separates us from Anne Sexton could be erased? What if we might become her peer, her collaborator, her patient, her friend? What if poetry itself might be a site of care and repair? I raise these questions as hypotheticals, but they are not hypotheticals in Airea D. Matthews' work. Simulacra, her first book, is filled with such encounters. She texts with Anne Sexton, chats with Gertrude Stein on the Eurostar, recovers, she invents Wittgenstein's Lost Black Book, rewrites Roland Barthes' A Lover's Discourse as a calculus equation. And she moves across these encounters in a dizzying array of forms: fables, a libretto, a series of tweets, biblical verses, text messages. In class, discussing this profusion of forms on Monday, Vesper observed, and I'm paraphrasing, that there is good reason for Matthews to marshal so many forms. She is confronting a set of issues for which there is no ready language, poetic or otherwise: addiction and mental illness, trauma and desire. Only the whole tradition, from Sexton to Stein, tragedy to tweet, suffices. And in her hands, the tradition becomes a way of reckoning with what otherwise cannot be said, of repairing what otherwise cannot be endured. Matthew's second book, Bread and Circus, published in 2023 by Scribner, is, if anything, even more ambitious. In a 2020 interview with Podcast Verses, she described the book, then still in progress, as a meditation on race and capitalism. It's a big topic, but Matthew handles it with her characteristic formal brilliance. The book is organized around a series of erasures of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, erasures which make Smith admit what he is otherwise unwilling to say about capitalism. For instance, in On Origin and Use, Matthew's redacted Smith announces that under capitalism, quote, every man grows to be a certain commodity, close quote. These grand pronouncements about labor and capital echo through the book and transform its meditations on addiction, poverty, and race into a kind of structural map of capitalist life. I'll give you an example. The book opens at Matthew's parents' disastrous wedding. The groom is drunk, the bride weeping on the floor of a WYCA bathroom. But as she considers calling off the wedding, Matthew's mother remembers, quote, the cost of the dress, flowers, drinks, the soloist, the hall, and her mother's second mortgage to fund the matrimonial circus. Sunk costs, which are too high for a working family to write off. And so she trips down the aisle while, quote, An unholy congregation craned their necks and swished their church fans, advertising a local funeral home to watch a lovely commodity reluctantly agree to her own barter. On its own, the poem is chilling, a portrait of a young woman whose best, maybe only choice, is to become a commodity. But Matthew does not let you read the poem on its own, nor does she want you to experience this as an exceptional or unusual story. Every man grows to be a certain commodity, Adam Smith admits in her erasure. The choice that her mother makes to walk down the aisle, to become a commodity, is part of a structural pattern. In Bread and Circus, Matthews gives us both, the personal and the structural, the despair of poverty, and the language to understand where that despair comes from, what forces produce it. And this too is a kind of repair. Like Sexton, the nurse, and the poet, Matthews comes to us as a peer, someone who shares our suffering. She comes to check our vitals, to ask how we are, and to help us imagine what it might mean to recover from this common affliction, this world we share. Airea D. Matthews received a BA in economics from the University of Pennsylvania, as well as an MFA from the Helen Zell Writers Program, and an MPA from the Gerald Ford School of Public Policy at the University of Michigan. She is the author of Bread and Circus, a finalist for the 2023 Los Angeles Times Book Award, and Simulacra, selected by Carl Phillips as the winner of the 2016 Yale Series of Younger Poets. Matthews is an associate professor and co-director of the poetry program at Bryn Mawr College. She was the 2022-2023 Philadelphia Poet Laureate. Please join me in welcoming Airea D. Matthews.
I feel like everything that Toby said, I really don't need to say much more to open up the text, but because I like to talk, I will.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I know that there are many things that you could be doing on a Wednesday night, and I'm grateful that you've chosen to sit in these seats and listen to some poetry. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Lori, for putting this together. Thank you to the ARCA family for organizing this festival, which I think is so critical in these times. We have so much that we're going through in all of our iterations of life, right? Wherever we are in the life stage. And sometimes it's hard to articulate what it is. And poetry helps us to articulate the thing we don't even realize we have language for. So thankful for this crowd and so happy to be here tonight. I'm going to read a little bit from Bread and Circus. Can you hear me better? Yes. Okay. I'm going to read a little bit from Bread and Circus tonight and also from Simulacra. And I think what I'm going to do is to tell you a fragmented story, a truth, to forward a hypothesis or two. But first, before I do any of those things, I have to give you a little bit of context. Toby's right. I was trying to repair both of my books. I've been on this urgent kind of journey toward repair, whether it's repairing my relationship with myself, repairing what I know about the world around me, or whether it's repairing the relationship I have with critical people who've been in my life, namely my father. He served during the Vietnam War and he died of AIDS after years of abusing heroin, a drug first introduced to him during his time in the armed services. Drug use was a known problem during that war. In fact, between 71 and 73, the US government attempted a response. In 1971, Nixon launched a drug urinalysis program to identify and rehabilitate military users. In 72, the Department of Defense launched an amnesty program which had about 16,000 people admit that they were using drugs. 16,000 service workers or service members agreed that they were using drugs or admitted they were using drugs. 74, there was a government report that revealed 42% of the US troops in 1971 had used opioids and about half of them had become physically dependent. Fast forward, in 96, there came a call from my father's social worker after over a decade of his absence from my life. She informed me that his death was imminent and that we should come to the hospital and say goodbye. We said goodbye, but I never grieved. There was no funeral, there were no receiving lines, no church, no flowers. There was a daughterly duty to a soul, no more. And although my sister and I tried to have him interred at a veterans hospital, he never listed us as his next of kin, so frankly we didn't have any rights in his death and we certainly didn't have any in his life. We simply had the cold body of a memory. We wound up cremating him, and his ashes sat dusty on a funeral home storage shelf for about 15 years until my mother, quietly nursing her own guilt, decided to bring his urn to her home. She placed him in a china cabinet beside those of at least 3 dead dogs. When I would visit with my children in tow, I joke with them about their grandfather being in their grandmother's cabinet of wonders. But just beneath my glib humor, there was a heat, like a blue flame. There was an echo, an empty room. There was grief. And I couldn't quite touch it, so I never quite named it. But it was a specter that hung back, quiet, though ever present. And in the absence of ceremony, I came to understand that language became my form of mourning. So Bread and Circus specifically, which is my second collection, it's a memoir in verse, it serves as a long overdue burial. And it allowed me to articulate what I felt policy and memory had blurred. It's not an indictment of a person or even any people, it's an indictment of systems. And systems is defined for me as those ideas of men that perpetuate our dysfunctions. And I hope those that come to these poems, or anything that I write, and I thank you all for reading, see them as an individual articulation of our shared humanity. And if my wildest dreams come to fore, if it's possible, I hope you see them as a well-oiled hinge that keeps our head on perpetual swivel. And so I start at the beginning. Rebel Prelude. In our garden, in our garden or our bedroom, we'd made love, or fought about bushes, hydrangea or rhododendron, purple ivies climbing our back fence, opal basil wilting. One of us had forgotten to water her, or was it autumn and she was dying on her own? Either way, the infested pepper dangling by frayed browning stem threads caught our attention. How did that parasite get inside? You mumbled about larvae, but I knew it was a winged thing, a puncture, a black and wicked door. Haunting axioms. Some ghosts don't know they're dead. This is also true of the living. Some ghosts feel trapped on earth. This is also true of the living. Some ghosts reenact their past. This is also true of the living. Some ghosts regret what's behind. This is also true for some living. Some ghosts have not earned rest. This is also true for some living. Some ghosts never seem to forget. This is not quite true for the living. Some ghosts return to their wound. This is always true of the living. Just as the invisible and visible are connected, so too are our lives with the political climate that we are raised in, that unfolds on our personal timeline. This next poem talks a little bit about that. It draws a parallel between the 1972 Bloody Sunday Massacre in Derry, Northern Ireland, and a moment of crisis a wide ocean away, the Troubles. Man watches his history on the screen with apathy and an occasional passing flicker of horror or indignation. Conor Cruz O'Brien, Irish historian. It's 1972. And inside, Ma's television buzzes. Oddly accented men wearing crucifixes call for work and housing. Children's coattails drag along the cars, walling in their free dairy. Tanks thrum through the rubble thrown. Stones ricochet off umbrella shields. Bullets plunge into some husband's flesh like rose thorns burrowing chest deep. A priest waves a handkerchief as flag of surrender, begging passage for the shallow breath whose blood slicks his boot. Unknowns will die, cradled in the arms of strangers who moments earlier sang, "We shall overcome someday," faithfully clinging to that same distant hope that finds Ma thousands of miles away on a different continent, wailing on her bedroom floor, arms flayed across her belly, mourning an unwanted whose spine swims against her backbone's curve, holding vigil for blood that will not come, and me, who surely will. Will, the infrastructure of human will, it's a complex architecture. And throughout human history, we see one network builds as yet another unravels, and we've seen it time and again, and here are just some examples. The US highway system versus urban communities, the New Deal public works versus racial inequality, Wall Street bailout versus social safety nets. It happens over and over again. This poem, set against the backdrop of the 1970s recession, explores how institutional expansion and personal struggle sometimes collide. Severance. 200 years after Franklin signed the Declaration of Independence, Amtrak purchased the crumbling stone viaducts and decrepit bridges between Boston and Washington. In 5 years, the federal government would surface 245 miles of track, lay 171,000 ties, renew 2,868 joints, interlock 5,800 switch timbers, and order 492 Amfleet cars, including 16 sleek Metroliners like one of the two housed at Trenton Rail Station, where the authorities found my father in stuporous nod while on the official clock. Having decided several offers of rehab enough, Amtrak severed all contractual encumbrances. It was 1977 when my father stumbled from that station into a recession, but first into Pete Lorenzo's bar to pilfer time through a bottle, then plot provision. 3 square, 4 souls, strategizing who to feed to whom. Capitalism isn't always about money, right? It's about desire, which is what my first book was really talking about. It was really thinking about desire. And this next book is really thinking about desire and addiction. This next book is really thinking about addiction and capitalism. But capitalism itself, again, as I said, is about loss. It's about desire. It's about commodification. And I wrote Bread and Circus partially to examine the libidinal nature of capitalism, how it promotes future satisfaction while keeping us stuck in a present where we feel like we lack something. Addiction works the same way, chasing something that never truly fills the void. In the book, I position Adam Smith and Guy Debord as opposites in economic thought because they were Adam Smith, capitalist, Guy Debord, Hegelian Marxist, which is a really fancy way to say that he was a Marxist who believed that you can own property. And I wanted to have those two juxtaposed against each other so that we can see the theory bookending what happens in between. And what happens in between is real life. What happens in between is often that thing that we live. It is the personal. And we begin to see how the personal and the political collide. This is called Adam Smith on Exchange. This is a portion of Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, which was his magnum opus in 1776. I'll read part of his text and then you'll hear my voice come through. Man sometimes uses the same arts with his brethren, and when he has no other means of engaging them to act according to his inclinations, endeavors by every servile and fawning intention to obtain their goodwill. He has not time, however, to do this upon every occasion. In civilized society, he stands at all times in need of the cooperation and assistance of great multitudes, while his whole life is scarce sufficient to gain the friendship of a few persons. Man stands at all times in need of the scarce sufficient, and has almost constant occasion for the vain benevolence. Give me that which I want, and you shall have this which you want. Swindle, Trenton, New Jersey, 1977. Learn the suits, Ace. A club looks like a three-leaf clover. A spade is an upside-down heart. A diamond looks like two kissing triangles. A heart is a goddamn heart. A hand is 5 cards, 1 card each finger. The ace is the highest, followed by head cards, king, queen, jack. Then count back by 10, that's the rank. You get what I'm giving? Bring a Barbie doll, something to play with. Circle the players from afar. I, your sneaky Uncle Nate, nigga tucks cards under his cuff. Pull on his sleeve, ask for a hug. If you feel stiff, say you're thirsty. Don't crawl under that table unless you want a gun in my mouth. Don't sniff the powder on the felt, and boy, don't touch those chips. They worth more than us both. You see what I'm saying? Aim for loose play, every motherfucker's hungry. When the game is tight, stakes get too fat too quick. You'll lose before the draw. Spy those hands, ace. Tell me what you see. Scratch your chin, rub your nose, pull on your ear. We got a code. Eat. Thing is, that ace is tricky. Hinges on what's held. It can play high or low. A full house ain't shit. Bend the straight, fuck a pair. Fear that flush. If you see those head cards in order with the same suit, grab your baby doll, go to the bathroom, flush the toilet twice, stick one finger down your throat, bloat your cheek, run out, force lunch on that table, say, Daddy, my head hurts. We make dust, baby boy, only lose what little you left. You know, I often think about poetry and how it doesn't really offer answers, and it's not meant to be our moral compass. It's meant to offer questions and give us a space to witness. Ars Poetica, 1979. Digging in dregs of trash to find the bird my father needed to get well, I tore a vanishing line across the length of my palm. My hand emerged slowly, crown of pulsing. My excommunicated ex-Navy father, come here, boy. Though I was a girl, he called me boy because he wanted one. He pressed his dirtied fingernail against the head of the valley, dispensing some trauma he'd picked up in Vietnam about dead bodies not being able to feel pain, but not being able to feel, and pain being the only true way to know aliveness. How pleasure persuades belief in a heaven that doesn't exist, and that he could prove God was fiction and Satan the realest motherfucker ever made. Look around. He lifted his index, the one staunching the flow to his lip, tasted my iron. I let out something more moan than wail, too shaken from much else, when he grabbed the back of my neck, pulled me close to teach his only lesson worth remembering. Cry, boy. Look that honest wound in the eye, and you better let this mutilated world see what she did to you. Positive curvature. No story can be told straight. On spheres like Earth, lines bulge, the shortest distance is measured in circles. Rays, like wheel tracks in deserts, sand made by who knows who. Let's say some desperate man is trapped in Death Valley on the unicycle he promised his 11-year-old one summer many moons ago. While navigating hills, dunes, saddles, and mirage, he must juggle and cycle straight ahead, follow his heart, ignore compulsion, and turn neither left nor right. In due time, he will find his daughter older and smiling at the border of that desert. Should she look across sands at her father's journey, she'll notice his path winding, circuitous, yet somehow calculably brief, inevitable. You ever stop to think that you're a word? Our names are words. And sort of anytime someone says our names, they're invoking our meaning to some degree. So to have a name in which you don't know the meaning, I would encourage you to make one up. Because you want to know your selfhood, right? You want to know what your name means every time someone says it. In this next poem, the speaker asserts her own meaning. She becomes both excavator and inventor of who she is after being understood to be something else. Etymology. Because my mother named me after a child born still to a godmother I've never met, I took another way to be known. Something easier to remember, inevitable to forget, something that rolls over the surface of thrush, because I grew tired of saying, no, it's pronounced. Now I tire of not conjuring that ghost I honor. Say it with me, era. Rhymes with Sarah. Sarah from the Latin meaning a woman of high rank, which also means whenever I ask anyone to hold me on their lips, I sound like what I almost am. Hear me, I'm not a D or a river charging through working class towns where union folk carve wedge for plots and barely any house at all, where bosses mangle ethnic phonemes and nobody corrects one word because the check's in the mail. So let's end this class's pretense where language doesn't matter and where names don't matter and language is too heavy to lift. My E is silent, like most people should be. The consonant is sonorant, is a black woman, or one might say, the spine. I translate to wind in a country known for its iron, imply lioness of God in Jesus' tongue, mean apex predator, free of known enemy, fierce enough to harm or fast enough to run. All I'm saying is everything I've already said. The tongue has no wings to flee what syllables it fears. The mouth is no womb, has no right to consume what it did not make. I'm going to speed this up, meaning I'm going to skip past a poem that I said I was going to read, and I'm not going to read it. Oh, forget it, I'm going to read it. American Ouroboros. So this is a contrapuntal. Contrapuntal is taken from the musical composition, the counterpoint. So in the contrapuntal, the poem version, you really have a 3-in-1 version. You have a 3-in-1 poem. So on the left panel, you'll have a poem. On the right panel, you'll have a poem. And then when you merge the hemispheres, you have a whole new logic taking over. I've been an imaginary, a mandala gone wrong, even been a star-draped snake fetting the spectacle as freedom unravels, and who speaks of this country driven to every brink inherent in rhetorical stutter? Such suffering portends patriots who liquor a hearth fire as their brothers strike a match. I've been an imaginary and a mascot unmasked, consuming my own tale in rituals of self-worship, the pornotrope prances, slithering as the American way, wheeled by a certain cognitive error and ego-steepled needs. Grave danger ever awaits renegades who gather for warmth in a house swiftly filling with gas. I've been an imaginary, a mandala gone wrong and a mascot unmasked, even been a star-draped snake, consuming my own tale, fetting the spectacle in rituals of self-worship as freedom unravels, the pornotrope prances. And who speaks of this country slithering as the American way, driven to every brink, wheeled by a certain cognitive error inherent in rhetorical stutter and ego's steepled needs? Such suffering portends grave danger ever awaits patriots who liquor a hearth fire and renegades who gather for warmth as their brothers strike a match in a house swiftly filling with gas. There are times when you allow your life to be open for other people through your work. And sometimes it won't always be generously perceived. And you have to accept that. It's okay. The question one has to ask themselves is, why am I opening my life? To what end am I opening my life? Or better yet, what questions do I have of this body and this world based on the political moments this body has endured, this life has endured? That's how the personal creates a wider lens, and how the personal becomes political, becomes universal in the work. So if you ever wonder if you're writing about yourself Is this narcissistic? Well, just remember, a narcissist would never ask that question. Narcissist tweets. At Artemis, looked down into the silvered water, and there he was. The finest creature I've ever seen, the man I want to be. I'm in love. At Eros, I want him inside me, but he only offers water. I've said I'm not parched, but I'm parched. He can't grasp nuance. At Echo, fuck off fairy, repeat, repeat, after me, after me. He'll kill you before you have me. He'll kill you, have me. At Gaia Nature, turns out my water spirit lover is a boy. Me too. Guess I'm gay. At least I'm in good company. Ask at Zeus about the water bearer, hashtag Ganymede game. At Hera Curses, that damn nymph at Echo rests near. My words fall back to me. Why do I suffer her curse? Hashtag stalker blues. At Kaikias blows, could you keep the wind still? Your kind kinks my lover's skin, makes him turn from me. At Odysseus, do sirens sing in chorus? When he speaks, I speak. I can't hear him without hearing myself. It's getting old now. At Poseidon, did your trident strike that spring? The water's shallow, but get this. When I kiss my lover, I drown. At Tethys, everyone in your life moves. Do you chase after or let them go? If what you thought was a pond is a puddle, do you mourn? My late grandmother, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on this. This is what I call a deconstruction poem, or maybe it's a reconstruction poem, I don't really know. But the poem is the imagined voice of my grandmother, and it started as a Facebook status, and I took it down because I was like, you know what? There's a little bit of genius in there. Take that out before someone else takes this poem. There's this famous story about actually Michael Jackson hearing a song, and he felt like he immediately had to record it because he's like, if I don't, Prince is going to take it. So sometimes when you recognize something is really good, you got to just keep it for yourself for a while until you figure out what it's going to be. And so when I was listening to Gertrude Stein, I was telling students today that there was something in the way her paratactical style, her experimental style, that reminded me quite a bit of my grandmother. And they couldn't have been any more different as the East is from the West. So my grandmother came up through the Great Migration from Pike County, Alabama, and she settled in the early part of the 20th century in Newark, New Jersey. There, she met my grandfather, who was a married Sicilian immigrant, or he immigrated from Sicily, Montelepre, Sicily, married, barber, bar owner, sometimes money launderer. And they fell in love and had a decades-long affair, even though he had 3 other children with his wife, who he was married to until the day that he died in 1963. They had my mother. She was born in 1949. She has fond memories of my father. And she grew up in Newark, New Jersey, a very segregated Newark, New Jersey, where her father lived around the corner with his family, and my grandmother lived around the corner from them in a home that he purchased them. If my late grandmother were Gertrude Stein, one southern migration, leech, broke speech, leaf ain't pruning pot, lay, lie, hair straight off, arrow branch and horse joint, elbow ash, roe fish, roe dog, slow milk pig, blue water sister, hogs like willow, wheat crow, wheat cow, soul bug, soul narrow, inches away, over the bridge, back that way, fur needles and coal, black hole, black out, black feet, blame, long way still, not there. There, here, same, to feed the soul. Old crow, liquor, drink, drunk, girdle, grits, grit, tea, get, shave, shook, shucked, shit, flour, lard, and swallow, hard edge, chew, chip, tooth, bite, tool chip, bite, bloat, blight, sit, TB, light city, downtown, dim, slight, dark, old art, new work, Nork. Lark fed, cornbread, bed feather back, Sunday shack, church fat, greased glove, dust rub, cheap-heeled shoe, window seat, mirror eye, window, eye, window, window, when though, wind blow, November, December, no cinder, no slumber, no summer, branch, branched, blanched, fried, freed, fly, want, what, what, graves want, 3 insegination. Good, smooth, curly-haired baby, baby rockabye my baby, mama rockabye that baby. Wrestle the earth, baby, no dirt, shine, neck, porcelain, tin, tarnish, powder, milk, powder, silk inheritance, front the wash tub, top the bin, leaky numbers run in, run on, red fever holds your palms, sweat it out, hot, heat the rest, pretty melt that wax wide flower, Ellis Island daddy, oh, daddy's bar, band. Mongrel hum, come now. Little bones bend, old crack, creak, crank, quick, curly Q. Fuck them, then fuck them. You hear me? Walk through, good head, baby. Half of you belong. 4 on Gertrude Stein. Who? Bills Mount Picasso. Who? Matisse. Who? Mortgage. No currency, canvas, paint brushes, stroke, bridge, brittle, blend, 10 miles day break, we broke. No brick, widgets in the envelope, no railroad green, agriculture, peace snap, earth under nails, spine and stilt, woman, roach kill, heel, woman, roaches in the crawl, woman, creep, keep, 5th grade, everywhere. Where, everywhere, we're everywhere, anyhow. We sacrifice and hammer, they sacrifice the hammer, never. Axe and hatchet make callous, hard hand, prison, pen, privilege, pinned, bar, thorn, pinned, pine, cross, crown, wait. Iron is harder. Chicken fat can is full of spark kill, or sparkle, or sparkle, ho, heave, holy, heavy lights, genius. That is that, Gertrude. Who?
Wow.
Oh, thank you, y'all. I'm gonna take my leave with this last poem called Nevertheless. So we write about hard things in poetry, a lot, right? And just because you write about the hard thing doesn't mean that you stay in the hard thing, because we have to move on. We do. That's a part of life. We have to be able to find joy where joy is to be found. And sometimes the poem only presents the opposite side, it presents the shadow side of joy, and you recognize it as such. You need both. Nevertheless. Praise to the father holding his sleeping daughter on the 52nd Street trolley. To the daughter dreaming through the pothole from praise. To the diabetic with shorn feet and sugarcane blood, to the anxious nerve through left hip and lower spine, to those flying accents on their routes, praise. To the red-headed Rasta in his ganja lace t-shirt, to the Vietnam vet at Cass Corridor holding a sign, to the sign which reads, not homeless, just struggling, praise. To the barbers calming the fatherless in their chairs, to the mothers trying not to overhear this soothing, to soothing, praise. To raise skylines and ruins to whatever replaces the horizon, to the lost toddler who refused to speak to strangers, to the strangers who would not let him be lost, praise. To those sisters in love with whoever won't love them, to others in love with whoever won't bother. Praise to the lovers who left lessons, those lovers who left scars, to the memory of topography, raised surface, smooth to touch, to its frail shards and ego's fringed edge, praise. To boys who make beeswax fingernails, to little girls who wear fatigues and eye black, praise to those often overlooked, the chronic overlooking, praise. To Miss Toto, Bambi Banks, Pearl Harbor, to bombs that never landed, to satellites that could not be coaxed to earth, to bodily grail that won't hold a lie, praise. To beauty that doesn't suffer rules, to dollar store chic and sleek vintage tins, to loose wave and tight curl, to wanting to be, to being praise, to love's revival, to incising shame's jugular, to the unrecalled, misjudged, and half-remembered praise, to the hard-won win against Chronos, to the stone wrapped in swaddling, the eaglets nesting latibule, barren sirens rearing urchin, the eye uncrossed, uncrowed praise, to scuffed boot houses, children running over frayed laces, praise to the old kitchen half-gutted, its April gnats and snowbank flies, praise to that which endures, to doors, layers of paint, years of storm-beating solid oak, to the gable roof that is a ceiling, coffered ceiling that is also a floor, praise to what shoulders weight, to brackets and load-bearing walls, beams and spindly skeletons, sacred geometry and tangents, to levees and pregnant summers, the buckshot-ridden body wheeling to coil spring, praise to the ground unfastening, to the thorny or fertile soil, to each Sarah's flutter wind and every earthworm's bristle entwined in waltz of welcome, praise to the body relenting to dust, the spirit yielding assent, praise to all who rejoice in becoming, amen, to all who transform in return. Thank you for listening. I now have the distinct honor to introduce the winner of the Balocating Prize. The winning poet is Noura Al-Shamari. Noura here? No? Well, Nora's got a big surprise coming. In Toratopsis Dorney, the poet employs a recursive structure with shifting imagery and an overarching biological metaphor to chart a speaker's evolution through childhood disruption over 7 years. The poem, named after the immortal jellyfish, adopts a layered cyclical form. 4 of its 5 stanzas, each marked by age, return to a specific domestic setting, subtly echoing the reversive process of its titular character. The use of second-person address haunts the poem. It not only creates a distinction between the speaker and the subject, but also allows the speaker to observe themselves with some distance, enhancing the theme of emotional fragmentation. The author's attention to stark domestic details, quote, chairs that cradle cardboard boxes, splintered tea kettle flung amid a frenzied battle, ground the surreal tone in physical space, while the repeated image of the heating vent you curl your body around becomes a poignant symbol of retreat, safety, and loss. Within the poem's tight 5-stanza structure, the speaker is 4 times described as a translucent being, both fragile and undefined, mirroring the physicality of the jellyfish while also invoking a ghost-like presence. This spectral quality suggests a young adult fading in and out of their own life, shaped by environments they can no longer contain nor fully desire to. Ultimately, the poet's admirable formal and imagistic choices mirror the struggle to heal without erasure, to transform without needing to escape or deny what came before. I'm going to accept this award in Nora's absence. Do we have her poem? I'd happily read it. It's in the envelope? Here we are. Toratopsis Dorney. In the corner of a dimly lit living room, underneath a flaxen tapestry with all of God's 100 names, supported by crooked, precarious nails, there is a heating vent you curl your body around. Against the bristled, moss-colored carpet, you are 10 years old, and you are absorbing all the warmth, translucent, fickle thing. This is your life. Past the kitchen with the never-occupied dining table and chairs that cradle cardboard boxes, loose pieces of laundry, groceries yet to be put away. Instead of pliant, pumping flesh, there is a heating vent you curl your body around. Beside a splintered tea kettle flung amid a frenzied battle, you've chosen not to understand. You're 14 years old, and you're attempting to quell the commotion, translucent, shrinking thing. You still have a way to go. Across the front door that leads to a porch encircled by a neglected garden, there is a heating vent, now concealed by a sleek cabinet. There's a place you once called home. You're 17 years old, and you're weary from enduring heavy, from carrying translucent, mutating things. All these skins you shed, limbs you retract, cells that regress, so you can return to that carpet. But it's not the same one, and the walls are a bare, pale ivory. There is no heating vent to press your skin against, and the hues you tried to peel, they never left. Translucent, naive thing, all this shifting, and the hurting stays the same. Nora Al-Shamari, y'all. It's been my absolute pleasure to spend this time with you. Who knows Nora? Anybody here? Oh, wow. You've got a poet in your mix. You know, you have yet to meet. That sounds exciting. I'm so excited to have spent the evening with you, and I'm thanking you so much from the bottom of my heart for giving me the time to share a little story, a little truth, and for a hypothesis or two. I wish you all the best in your own writing as you grapple with the things that keep you up at night. You grapple with what vexes. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Have a beautiful evening.
Let's have one more round of applause for her. There are lots more opportunities to continue the conversation this week. Starting right now, we're hosting a reception for Airea in the Lookout Gallery on the second floor. Come up, say hi, buy a book, get it signed. Tomorrow, there's a free lunch with Airea in Phillips 154. That's just one of the seminar rooms on the first floor. Come, tell the people at the cafeteria that you're with the Center for Poetry, and you can share a meal, break some bread with us. And then tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. in the Serenity Room, Sister Circle is hosting a workshop with Airea. So we hope you will continue to partake in the richness of her presence. And thank you all again so much for coming. We'll be back again next week with Kenzie Allen. Thank you.